Hard Knocks, episode 3. I'm just as excited for the Bears as I've ever been. Watching Caleb, the confidence, and honestly watching the confidence from Flus today was notable. So what did you guys think? I liked what I saw from the head coach and the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the connection. So for me, it's good to see both of them getting along, getting together. It's good to see. I love seeing a defensive coach with a offensive mind like Caleb Williams. I think it works perfectly. I feel like that's how all or most great quarterbacks really have success and like sustainable success in the league. And I love how they're interacting. Eberflus, one thing you have to say about him is he reads the defense extremely well. And it's just time and time again, you just watch him work, and it's like, what's going on for sure. So I have complete faith in him. I'm totally fine with him going forward as my coach for the future.
That's crazy. I had to say, yeah. No, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I know you can't put much credence into preseason games, but on both sides of the ball, they look bought in. They look like they know what the game plan is going in. It's being executed. Caleb is getting he's getting the time out there with the ones that he's getting in practice, and he's getting the game time reps to be able to get these connections. And then it's more so how well the defense is playing when they're showing the montages. It's the emphasis should really be on just how good they're doing as a unit, and it's kind of translating everything that you were seeing in camp in the first 2 episodes. It really is coming together for you guys. I mean, it's preseason, take it with a grain of salt, but I mean, to hold any NFL team doesn't matter. Those guys are still getting paid to play too. May even be on preseason and rookie contracts that aren't fully guaranteed, but they're showing up, and both sides of the ball look pretty solid.
No, definitely.
What do you think?
They can definitely appreciate the depth, like you spoke to, Mike. Even these guys who are undrafted, not necessarily having guaranteed spots on the roster, but they're all buying into, for better or for worse, the Eberflus mantra, the hits principle, the intensity that you have to bring to that defense. And it's nice as a Bears fan to have one side of the ball totally locked down, even if there's some uncertainty and some questions about how quickly this Shane Waldron offense is going to gel and how quickly Caleb will be able to assimilate to the NFL. With all that considered, it's nice to know that Flus, and I've had my issues with Flus. I have been on the fire Flus train before. I converted a Justin Fields jersey into a fire Flus jersey. It's difficult to do, but if you mess with the Fields name and the one, you can turn it into a fire Flus. I can get the picture posted on our Instagram as well for anyone who wants to see that. But it's documented record that I have never been particularly an Eberflus fan. But I'm ready to eat crow if this defense is humming and if he is able to translate what is, as Christian spoke to, certainly a defensive intelligence and a savviness as a defensive coordinator. You really saw why he was hired as the Bears head coach in this episode, I think. You've got the intensity. You've got the buy-in from the defense, from these defensive players, from Jalen Johnson, Montez Sweat, top players. If they're buying in, the young guys are going to buy in too. He might be the perfect, corny, psycho nut that this team needs to lead their defense and get that side of the ball out of the way for Caleb to grow on the offensive side, possibly have some mistakes, and not have to worry about it sinking this team in the long run.
For both of you guys, I wanted to pose the question. Even just watching the tape, even watching, the preseason game, watched it live, and then obviously saw the highlights here on Hard Knocks. There's a lot of positive influence just from even thinking back to watching the Seahawks with Geno Smith that I feel like Shane Waldron's already bringing here to Chicago. And it's translating really well with the fact that, he's letting Caleb get out of the pocket. He's letting him use his athleticism to be able to stretch the field with, we've mentioned the athletic wide receiver trio, but obviously the second and third string guys, he knows who his quarterback is already. And I think he realizes it's very similar to, not that Geno Smith is a comparison, but in terms of a mobile quarterback to get out of the pocket and with an arm that can throw on the run like he can, it's a lot of the same of what he was already doing, and I feel like it's translating very well in just these first couple of games. What do you guys?
Well, I think part of how it works too is that when you have a veteran, or should I say a rookie, with the confidence and football awareness and knowledge of a veteran that Caleb seems to display, it probably makes the job easier for Waldron when he had a veteran, Geno Smith, who was chomping at the bit to get out there and play. He's got the same thing with Caleb here, who's ready as ever to step onto that NFL field. I was happy that he was able to get those reps in at Soldier Field. It's a different animal out there when you're trying to play in front of that crazy crowd in Chicago. I mean, I've been there. It is unlike, it's a small stadium, but it's unlike any other crowd. They're hungry for a championship, and they let Caleb know that just with how loud they were for a preseason game. It's going to be a completely different animal during the regular season. So I was glad that they were able to work out. He was able to work out some of the kinks, but they got to get that headset fixed. That cannot happen in the regular season. That cannot happen in the regular season.
Absolutely.
I'm glad it happened in the preseason.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback off that, I think that's the reason why you draft Caleb number 1 overall. That's why he was the slam dunk pick. You know what he is right away. You know he's ready mentally right away to really step into that mold. And I think you just saw it right away. That's why they drafted him. That's why they gave him the offense. That's why they gave him the first team offense right away before he ever even got drafted here. And I'm really happy with his progression. And I do agree with Mike. I think Shane Waldron is doing a lot for him in the same way that he did for Geno Smith in Seattle. The similarity that I think they both have is they're extremely accurate passers, and they're extremely accurate down the middle of the field. I think that's a key integral part to having a successful offense in the NFL. You see it time and time again with Jared Goff in Detroit. Being able to drive the ball down the middle of the field is really important. But just to go back to the defense a little bit, I just had a question for you guys. I mean, we saw some of the trade conversation with Matt Judon, and I just wanted your thoughts on how you felt about the overall. Is there a need for the Bears to go out and get a star, a vet like Matt Judon, maybe a Hassan Reddick or something like that? Or are you happy with the young group that we're building? How do you feel about that moment in the time in the episode, this past episode?
I mean, as a Bears fan, I think you always want your team to be adding on the defensive side. You can never have too many horses up front to be able to go after that quarterback. I would not say that the Bears are particularly deep across the edge at this point, or across the line. I would say they could definitely afford to add another piece opposite of Montez Sweat. Austin Booker has looked twitchy. He's looked long, athletic, everything you'd want from an edge rusher. He's still a 5th-round pick. He's still, I think, 21 years old. He's going to be raw. He's going to have growing pains as an edge rusher when he's facing left tackles consistently, or any offensive tackles consistently, I should say, in the NFL. So I would like the Bears to make another move, whether that's Yannick Ngakoue before the season. I think that would be a decent default for them, as it would just be going back to the guy they had last year. I would look out for polls to make a move around the deadline. We've seen in both of these past 2 seasons, once with Chase Claypool, that did not go so well. And then this past season with Montez Sweat, that went very well, and they were able to defy a lot of folks' expectations in getting that deal done and then signing him to an extension. And both the trade and the extension now look like excellent values for the Bears after what Montez Sweat was able to show in the second half of the season. But I think we need to watch out for Poles to make another move like that. He's shown that he's willing to exploit the trade market more than your average general manager. He's willing to be active, see if there's an avenue to make the team better. And I think that this is the perfect chance for him to do that with this team. There's no reason to rush roster building. Matt Judon for a third would have been a pretty darn good value, but you don't need to rush it this season. If you think that come trade deadline time, there's a piece that you can add and they'll take this team to the next level and make them a contender, whereas they otherwise would not be, then you make that move. And Ryan Poles has shown that he's willing to do that. But at this point, you don't need to overpay. Certainly not for Hassan Reddick. Great pass rusher, great player. I don't think he fits the Bears scheme, getting his hand down in the dirt consistently. And I don't think he fits the Bears' plans financially based on whatever contract he's looking to get from his next team.
I think all I can say about the Judon trade, and obviously he goes to Atlanta. He may not have been the perfect fit, but it really would have seemed like if Ryan Poles could have locked down Matthew Judon, I mean, that's a cherry on top of an already A+ offseason that I think he's had, that I think the league has recognized that he's had. So if you're Chicago, if you're Ryan Poles, don't hang your head too much on it. I think, especially with what they were offering and kind of where the team is sitting at, I think the Bears and Falcons are actually in pretty similar positions, just in terms of kind of what the young pieces that they're working with, also attached to the older pieces that they're working with. I think if you're the Bears, like you said, Pat, I mean, Yannick Ngakoue is still out there. Yeah, you have trust in your defense. I don't think Matthew Judon was a make or break signing. I'm sure it would have been nice, but yes, I mean, you already have, Montez Sweat. It was a side of the ball that I think you guys addressed very well in the offseason, and it's nothing to hang your hat on going forward.
Well, and there have been reports that the Patriots also think that the Bears and Falcons are in similar positions, just like you, Mike, and they assessed their positions in the sense that they thought that they would have similar picks, and that to that end, they gave Matt Judon the choice of whether to go to the Falcons or the Bears, and he chose the Falcons. And that was interesting to me for a number of reasons. There could be a multitude of factors as to why that would be, financially or otherwise. I can't imagine environmental is probably a huge reason, not wanting to play in the Chicago cold, not having to play in the cold anymore than he's had to already in New England. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. Choosing the Falcons over the Bears. He's going with a veteran quarterback over a rookie quarterback if he's looking to win now, but it could have more to do with the contract than anything else. What was your reaction to that?
Yeah, to me, I actually was very comfortable not trading picks. We said it early on in the podcast. I think next year's draft is going to be our most important draft of our lifetimes. And I do believe there are plenty of guys that we can get and we can target. But like you said, Pat, I know Poles loves doing midseason trades for the right guy. So as long as it's the right guy, I'm not concerned. And that just goes to show, like, one thing I'm very happy and happy to see in this latest episode of Hard Knocks is seeing Ryan Poles really have his hand on the construction of this roster. Prior to this episode, I was actually kind of concerned with Ryan Poles' overall resume as it pertained to like drafting talent and kind of identifying talent with some of these picks, like with Velus Jones and obviously Nate Davis. Like, there's certain questionable pickups, Chase Claypool, obviously. I did have some concerns with the identification of talent by Ryan Poles, but I do think he knows exactly what he's getting. And today's episode, I think, was a very refreshing thing to see, knowing that Austin Booker was his guy, his pick. Prior to this episode, I didn't know if Eberflus had his fingertips on who they were picking the last couple of years. Not sure if Kyler Gordon Brisker, all those guys were necessarily Poles guys or Eberflus guys. I think today's episode, to me, kind of showed that Poles is very much active and very much a part of building that defensive side of the roster.
Mike, what'd you think?
I think it also underscores his commitment to just roster construction in general. I mean, we talked about, when they got DJ Moore and then bringing in Keenan Allen. I think Ryan Poles has really shown how well he knows the players he already has on this roster and knowing where he can make them even better. And I agree with your take on it that, Matthew Judon would have been a flashy signing. It would have I don't think it would have made or break their defense, when you already have Austin Booker there, like you said, Christian, who has, even through Hard Knocks, as we've seen, but I mean, he's shown out during, his limited game participation and in practice. I mean, I think it was he knew he could have made the move. I don't think you turn down, going to play for the Bears in what, everyone in the league, they're on notice for the entire league of what they're building. I think had it worked out, had it worked out, it would have worked out, but I don't think it's the end of the world at all that you didn't sign Matthew Judon given what you already have on the roster to support.
No, and I appreciated that Ryan Poles didn't overpay and that he knew his price. I think cautious conviction is the way that I would describe the way that Poles has approached building this roster, because the guys that he goes for, he makes sure that they're his guy for sure. He's willing to trade the second round pick if need be. We've watched him do it 2 years straight, but he knows that he's picking his spot when he does it. He's trading for Chase Claypool because he's giving Justin Fields every last chance to prove himself. In 2022, it was a flawed roster around him, but then you see the DJ Moore move, then you see the Montez Sweat move. You see that he learned from his mistakes and that his approach is paying off more than it's failing for the most part. So I'm trusting Ryan Poles and how he's building this roster. You have to trust him when he could get a guy like Keenan Allen for a 4th round pick. And I'll tell you what, there have been a lot of rumors about Keenan Allen being possibly overweight or slower or looking, maybe sluggish out of his breaks. This is a guy who hasn't played a preseason snap before this season since 2018. Give him his time. He's a vet. He's in his 30s. This is a guy who put up an 1,000+ yard season last year, put up one of the best seasons of his career. He's going to be able to play well. They're most likely going to use him as a 3rd down specialist, slot wide receiver. I believe that once we see this Bears offense play out, it's going to be Rome Odunze, DJ Moore as the lead X and Z unquestionably on this team, with Keenan Allen finding his time in the slot. But there's also going to need to be time for Gerald Everett to be on the field. There's also going to be times when Tyler Scott is going to need to stretch the field. So you're not going to be seeing Keenan Allen relied upon to be the number 1 receiver as he was in LA. This is going to be a guy who's able to conserve his energy, and I think we're seeing that at the beginning of this preseason based on just this guy does not need to empty the tank. He's got nothing to prove. He's a certified all-pro in his 30s. So you've got to be able to roll with the punches when it comes to Keenan Allen not having an all-star preseason.
Pat, I had one question off that because there was a name you didn't mention in terms of pass catchers. And I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on just kind of where the quote-unquote battle is at, because I agree. I think Gerald Everett has kind of shown out in the training camp and being able to come in as a bona fide pass catcher. Where do you think Cole Kmet's role is going to come in on this roster? And kind of what do you think that will be?
I think that he's settled.
Yeah.
Cole, or Christian, you take it.
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, I think his role, I don't know if you're going to say it, Pat, I think it's going to be really identifiable in the red zone. He's going to have mismatches all day long. And even if Keenan Allen, I mean, I agree with your take. I'm not worried about Keenan Allen being there for even all 17 games this season. I just know when he's playing, he's going to be extremely effective. So not concerned about that at all. For Cole Kmet, he is an extremely talented run blocker. I think if there's any takeaway from this preseason, it's the concern of our run blocking game. Obviously, I think Cole Kmet, if we're going to take a step forward in the rushing offense, I think Cole Kmet will be an integral part in that. But as far as being a red zone target, I think nothing will change. He's going to be a big time red zone target. Wouldn't be surprised if he had close to double-digit touchdowns this season. But yeah, I think there's definitely a role for him, and I think most importantly, he's going to have to continue to be and get better at being a great run blocker, because that's what we'll need this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think nobody can discount how much Waldron is going to rely on the run to take the pressure off of Caleb, especially early on. They are not going to be asking, even in a game against the Tennessee Titans where the Bears are going to be favored, they're not going to be trying to have Caleb do everything, play hero ball to win this game. They're going to ideally rely on the run game. Caleb's not going to have to throw too many passes. He'll be able to use play action, hit open guys with a clean pocket, and it's going to be a lot simpler than what he's shown he's had to do in order to win at places like USC, Oklahoma, when he's coming in down however many down 3+ touchdowns against Texas. He's not going to have to do that on this team. They're not going to be asking him to do that on this team. So as long as he's able to rely on DeAndre Swift, I do think I'm changing my tune on Khalil Herbert. I think that they're going to keep him on this team. I think he's proven that he's too good of a pure runner on a team with a rookie quarterback to cut at this point.
Yep.
You got to kind of roll with the punches on his lack of a pass catching ability and his pass blocking inadequacies. But Roschon Johnson hasn't been healthy enough this preseason. Travis Homer's definitely not a guy that you're keeping over Khalil Herbert. And Velus Jones damn sure doesn't deserve Khalil Herbert's job when you've had consistent production from him. So I'm changing my tune on Khalil Herbert. I think that he does have a role on this team. I don't think that he's going to be getting as many touches as he would like or as his fantasy owners would like. But this is going to be DeAndre Swift's running back room predominantly. But once again, this team's going to rely on their running game and their defense. Caleb and Rome are great players to have. I'm going to be watching for their development all season. But I pray to God that the Bears aren't hoping on them to come in and save the day without any of the other players contributing. I think that they're not going to be relying on the rookies this season, ideally.
Yeah. So I guess the final question related to Hard Knocks I just wanted to ask you guys is, that final building block I feel like comes in special teams for Ryan Poles. Thoughts on Tory Taylor? How do you like Tory Taylor so far? Any nicknames come to mind for him? Not Australian related. I had Tory Undertaker Taylor. I don't know what you guys had.
It fits with the coffin corner concept as well, as corny as that may seem. I think the Crocodile Punter is almost too good of a nickname to ignore. I'm going to continue calling him the Crocodile Punter in my mind. I understand his apprehension based on the Steve Irwin connection. It's probably murky waters for him to take up that mantle as an Australian. But I will say, regardless of what his nickname is, he is going to be a weapon for this team immediately. There's a reason he was one of the few special teams players taken in the draft, let alone in the top 4 rounds. This is a guy who has shown he was Iowa's #1 weapon last season.
I was just say he was experienced doing that Iowa offense, punting the ball. Like,
yeah, definitely. He's shown you that he has hang time on his leg. He's got every club in the book, as they've said, every club in the bag, as they said today. He can kick it with every rotation, backspin, frontward spin, helicopter punt. He can do it all. He can pin you inside the 20, which I believe he did multiple times in the preseason game. And if there is a difficult place to punt, it's right off the lake at Soldier Field. It's going to be a tough place to kick, but I think Tory Taylor is the man for the job, and he's going to be the better punter in probably every game the Bears play this season. I can't show you a better punter at this point other than Tory Taylor right now in the league that I can definitively say is better.
Yeah, well, we will see.
Shout
out to
you got a guy? You got a guy?
I just want to shout out Wishnowski in San Francisco.
Wishnowski.
He's great. Matt Ariza, shout out Matt Ariza. He's got a boot.
Matt Ariza, he's played as many games as Tory Taylor.
Very sure.
We'll see. I'm taking Tory Taylor over Matt Ariza.
Don't sleep on Corey Bajorkin.
I got two more points I want to make about Hard Knocks before we move on. One hot take: Tyson Bagent is a top backup quarterback in the NFL. He showed you last year that he can get you through multiple games, even in the Luke Getsy side-to-side offense. He's not a guy that's going to throw lasers down the field on you. The arm strength isn't elite, but he is as capable of a backup quarterback in terms of managing the game, playing in rhythm, doing exactly what the offensive coordinator is asking, as well as any other quarterback, as well as any other backup quarterback that I would take in the league right now. I trust Tyson Bagent. If things go wrong for the Bears, which I hope they don't, I trust Tyson Bagent to be able to shepherd them through, see what I did there, multiple games this season if need be. So I think that also and I'll say it, Luke Getsy should be getting on the phone with the Bears, or at least getting on the phone with Al Davis to get on the phone with the Bears to see what it would take to lure Tyson Bagent to the Raiders, because I'll tell you what, when it was purely Luke Getsy's offense, Tyson Bagent seemed to run it better than Justin Fields when it came to being on schedule. So who knows? I think that he's a very capable backup that a lot of teams would – maybe they wouldn't shout it from the rooftops, but they would prefer to have him as their starter. And I'll put that on the bank right now.
He's a gritty player. I'll give you that. He's a gritty player.
I will say I do love Bagent. I love the fact that we have 2 more years of roster control. And like, you can't go wrong with an undrafted free agent at that position. And yeah, one of the good parts about the episode today is just to see the relationship between the starter and the backup with Caleb and Tyson. I think they get along just great, just fine. I know Tyson has higher aspirations than to just be a designated backup in the league. So yeah, if someone wants to call and trade us a 5th or a 4th for him, yeah, all day long, I would be happy to see it.
No, I'm not giving up a 5th for him. I'm definitely not giving up a 4th for him. Like you said, this is a capable quarterback with 2 years of control on an undrafted rookie's contract. I see everything I need to see from Tyson Bagent, aside from elite arm strength. This is a guy that limits his mistakes, takes care of the ball. And, like I said, he's not going to wow you. He's not going to be the reason you win a game, but he can be the reason that keeps you from losing a game based on taking care of the ball in a league where we've seen, a struggle to develop quarterbacks, and a league with however many backup quarterbacks. Were there like 60-something starting quarterbacks last season with how many guys are getting injured? You're going to need a good backup quarterback. It's going to matter at some point this season, and I think the Bears are set up well. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about for the Bears is we're going to bring it back to a guy we know for a purpose. Nate Davis has overstayed his welcome on this team. After watching him do the line dance, twist and turn, whatever he was doing on that sack of my guy Caleb, I shrieked like a little girl when I saw Caleb crumple to the ground after Nate Davis's guy got past him almost immediately to sack Caleb during the preseason game. I wanted them to take him out immediately, both Caleb and Nate Davis. And I really think that this team, going forward, the best thing for the Bears is to roll with this starting offensive line. You got Braxton Jones at left tackle, Tevin Jenkins at left guard, Coleman Shelton as your center. He was the center for the Rams last year, was a perfectly average center. I think that he's a great replacement level center, better than the Bears have had before. Then you take your other guy that you wanted to play center, Ryan Bates, and you move him to Nate Davis's current position at right guard. Nate Davis has lost his right to that job. Other guys have earned that job over him. We can dispel with any concerns over his contract. This team's ready to win. This team's ready to compete. Doesn't need a guy who doesn't want to practice. So we boot Nate Davis for Ryan Bates. Right tackle, Darnell Wright. There's no question about that. And then who does it open up the spot for when we cut Nate Davis? Our old friend and a guy who I can't wait to see eventually step foot onto Soldier Field and let his dream come true. Our guy, Doug Kramer, who I think I've seen enough from this preseason and preseasons of the past to show. I mean, this guy came into the league as a drafted offensive designated center. It takes being a great player to do something like that. And he was a capable player at Illinois, dependable every season. I think that he's exactly what the Bears have needed in terms of just being a guy that you can depend upon at center to not have things go horribly wrong, which at both quarterback and center, the Bears, since Olin Kreutz, have just seemingly moved from the next horribly wrong player to the subsequent one. So I want them to get rid of Nate Davis and open up a roster spot for my guy to be the backup center, Doug Kramer. Ryan Poles, I know you're listening.
Yeah,
he had two missed blocking assignments on that, and one, that obviously resulted in Caleb getting sacked. I mean, you can't, when you're protecting the franchise back there, that just can't happen.
Yeah, we are a pro Doug Kramer podcast, so if it comes down to Doug or Nate, we got to go Doug. But yeah, one thing I'm interested to see though is this game, this last preseason game versus the Chiefs. Eberflus has already come out and said he's not going to play most of the starters. I think it would be a bad call to not play Nate Davis 15 to 25 snaps next week because to me, the right guard position, as you said, Pat, it's not shored up. It's not, the starter is not figured out yet. Ryan Bates has been dealing with some injuries during camp as well. Again, we'll go back to Matt Pryor a little bit. I do like him a lot. I mean, he could even wind up getting the starting job as far as I'm concerned. But that's the core offensive line position to look out for. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that.
And I hope Nate Davis, I hope he proves us wrong. I want Nate Davis to be worth every dime. I hope they don't have to cut him and save $10 million next season, Ryan Poles, maybe. And I hope they don't have to do that. But at this point, what else can you root for when the guy hasn't practiced and hasn't performed up to his contract, and there were already concerns about his work ethic when he was in Tennessee? So we'll see. I want Poles to be right about Nate Davis, just like I wanted Poles to be right about Chase Claypool. But sometimes you got to cut your losses.